Now, ladies, I'm afraid Johnny Connor is no longer free and single man, but Richard Hawley, the actor who portrays him, has very kindly freed himself up to come on the podcast for a chat about this week's events on Corrie and his time on the show so far. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a great pleasure. Good morning, ladies and everybody.
So we absolutely loved the wedding scenes this week, but before we go into that, tell us a bit about Johnny's stag do and Carla's interesting choice of outfits for you guys.
Oh, Johnny's stag do. Well, it's probably one of the best moments in my life, in my career, I think. Inside every honest English British actor, there's a desire to get dragged up on Corrie, and I've done it, and I just feel, do you know what? I could probably stop now, and I've been happy. It was fantastic. There's one of those inside all of us, if we're honest. It was lovely. What I really loved is it came from Carla as well.
Yeah.
She's this slow. I believe it's common knowledge, isn't it, now that she's probably coming back?
Yeah, I think so.
And I just loved the way that she's, her first great sort of joke back to the street is to do that to her dad and her brother. So that was her choice, and I was delighted by it. I have to say, the only times I've ever done drag on TV is with this ITV bunch. They seem to see me that way. I did it years and years ago on Prime Suspect. I was a undercover transvestite policeman for a short while, and I don't know. I just looked like the same woman but older, I think.
I tell you what, Jimmy looked like he was enjoying it a bit too much, to be honest.
He ate it up, didn't he? He loved it. Yeah, he actually loved it. And Davina, I think we should have called him, basically.
Yes, exactly.
He seems to be gone through, a woman with no name on that one. But I loved it. I mean, yeah, he just ate it up. It was interesting because it wasn't over camped. I think it was, and this was partly the writers, but partly the director who said, I just wanted you to sort of play it kind of as blokes. Jimmy's was a lot kind of higher camp, I think, than the others. But this is just sort of. I thought it was funny because it was as close to sort of the Les Dawson world as it is to RuPaul, really.
Yeah. What was it like filming the two wedding ceremonies?
Well, it was busy. I mean, we were backwards and forwards to the hospital and out to the, out to the big do.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could see from the moment you got the scripts through that this is going to, it's kind of immense, really, and a great big, classic, not beyond classic, Corrie wedding, and it was huge fun because we got to look, obviously there's the great stuff going on in the fountain, which you can see that's just going to be wonderful, hilarious, and quite sexy, actually. And then we found out we got to ride on motorbikes, so that was fun.
Yeah, did you get much of a go on that?
We got sort of we didn't go roaring down the motorway at all like that. No, I mean it was pretty much just a drive in and stuff. But once you straddled a Harley, you'll never forget it. So that was great. And of course, Sally Ann had to straddle it with a dress on.
Yeah.
I thought she was perhaps going to go side saddle or something like that. But no, she kind of fully went for it. But what was delightful for us really was the sort of quiet, I think, kind of quiet beauty of what happened in the hospital against that great big stately home setting. It was this kind of sort of had all this a kind of depth and integrity and the beauty. And I mean, I was immensely proud. You've got all the kind of Corrie royalty there, really. You've got those great elders. And to be in the scene with all of them and to be getting married and to be getting married to someone who's got that real depth of history that Jenny Connor Bradley has with all of them. That was, immense privilege and a great joy.
Yeah, it was only right that Rita was there in the end, but when we watched it, we were very pleased when when the idea of going to the hospital to get married to Rita was suggested.
Well, it's
lovely scenes.
Yeah, if you get the chance to marry in front of the Pope, you're going to do it.
Yeah,
aren't you?
exactly.
Was there ever a time in the past year when you wondered if Jenny and Johnny wouldn't actually make it down the aisle, like anything would get in the way, or did you kind of always know that this was definitely heading for the ring on the finger?
I don't know now. I can't think back. It was on, off. I'm not sure if I knew that we were definitely going to get married, particularly until fairly late on in the day. I suppose you feel that this has got a kind of inevitability towards it, because I think it's such a good pairing, apart from anything else, with a great deal of life and future left in it. So I always assumed it would go on, although obviously story-wise it looked like sometimes it would get put off. But I think that that's part of the strength of the relationship. Is going to be, it was and is going to be, driving through these kind of, a sort of a bit of a war zone of catastrophes that are going on all around us. And you find a good team. Here we are, we're a good pair.
Definitely.
Johnny was one of the few people who knew about Aiden's affair before this week. How would you say he feels about what Aiden was getting up to behind Eva's back?
Well, I think he went through a dilemma, I guess, because there was a time when I think he wants him to do the right thing, and I think that the problem is Aiden didn't really know what the right thing was, and it would be nice to just be clear cut and honest, because Johnny's had experience really of hiding a secret for 20 years and of what that's like to live with it, and what the liberation of that is when you finally can face it and open up and stop carrying that burden. So I think he knows that Aiden's got to it was difficult. I think he basically asked Aiden, he said to Aiden, lie, actually, despite his own experience, which in a way I think is quite shocking, but you get to a point where what else can you do? Don't tell her, because you need to keep going forward with this.
And Johnny didn't even tell Jenny either, did he? I mean, do you think he couldn't trust Jenny with the truth? She's never really seen eye to eye with Aiden.
No, I think that would have been a bit risky and unnecessarily sort of volatile, and I don't think, in a sense, it was about her at that point. I think this is certainly at the early points. They're a close family, and I think that at the moment, I think you can see just the beginnings of Johnny perhaps separating from the very tight relationship he has with his children, and realise that he's chosen Jenny, and that this is, to some extent, she is now going to be his first stop in terms of honesty and truth and love and duty and loyalty and all that stuff, and maybe it even has to be let cut free.
I always wondered whether Johnny's feelings of guilt over their mum's death was one of the reasons why he was so close to Aiden and Kate. But you're right, I think now they're married, him and Jenny, she's got to come first.
I think she'll come first, and hopefully, you kind of blend that family, and you blend it well, and you can blend it strongly. But before that, I'm not sure that it was ever guilt. I just think that that's how you are with families. We were tight, he's grown up, he's been a single parent his whole life, really, for those kids, most of their lives. In one sense, I always think that Kate's taken the place of a mum. And that might be something to explore in the future, where she kind of cuts loose and becomes a daughter, rebels. I'm not sure, I'm not sure what's going to happen. But I don't think it was guilt. I think it was it's family, it's family, and There
have been a lot of accusations flying around about Jenny being a gold digger, or at least being on like a power trip. Without getting too much into spoiler territory, what do you think she'll think about Johnny starting or wanting to retire?
I think she's I think she's heard it all before. Yes. I don't think it's just that. I don't think either of them, actually. I think that he's going to have issues around that. I don't know this. This is just me looking at the character.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'd find it easy to retire. Retire to what? And I'm not sure that he's handling the... I'm sure you've got a couple of questions about the MS, but I don't think he's necessarily going to handle that particularly well. I think he might overdo things, for instance, at certain times. So I can't see it. I don't think he's the retiring type. So although he says it, although he thinks it, although he dreams of it, I'm not sure that that's what he'll want to do.
Yeah.
I'm pretty damn sure it's not what Jenny will want, although I think she's in a place where, they have an increasingly honest and loving relationship. I think the MS was a big thing for her, and I think that she has come good over it, and I think that she'll put him and his welfare first. But she will know that doesn't mean sitting around on your arse doing nothing.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the work you've done with the MS Society in researching for this story then.
Well, it was fascinating. I mean, we had early talks with them, obviously, and I spent a lot of time with a guy called Richard Bones, who has MS. So I was able to call him up about all sorts of details, and ask how it is. But the interesting thing around it is, of course, it's unique to each. In many ways, it's unique to each person,
right?
And how your symptoms manifest, and then of course how you respond to them. But I mean, there's certain common themes around when you sort of get a diagnosis. You can go through all sorts of denial. It might be a relief. It might explain, as it did for Johnny, certain symptoms, certain things that have happened in your history, which involves, for instance, it does go back to the death of the mum. I don't know if you remember, but there's sort of a thing that can happen with a sight that blindsided him to seeing the car that killed their mum.
Yeah.
So all that stuff, but it's a kind of and I think it's only just begun. At the moment, it's just really looked at the initial diagnosis. I think I've been talking more recently with the guy, someone from the MS Society, where we can take it further. And the response has been really good, actually. And I think in many, many ways, people are just very glad that it's been represented.
Right.
And it's been represented, I'm absolutely positive, as with as much integrity as possible by Coronation Street. And certainly, I know that me and the people closest to me, the researchers and the advisors, all really want to do it honour. Of course, it's a useful condition to have for the form that we're working in, because it's relapsing and remitting, so it can come in and you can have attacks and you can have stories around that, and then it can go. So there's a long haul idea to it, and there's the shorter times where it's where you're actually having attacks.
Yeah.
But I think the common factor is something people quite often say is they say, I have MS, but MS doesn't have me, and it's this incredible sort of determination to live your life. Actually, you've had a real knock on the door, and not to let it stop you doing things. And there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, I've just been reading a book of poems by someone who got MS, who really only started writing in order to explore her pain, and has become the most wonderful poet. And there's just many stories of people actually taking up new hobbies, kind of taking life further and than perhaps before. So yes, people are suffering. People suffer fatigue. There's all sorts of complex difficulties in terms of people around you, because it's often an invisible condition. People can't see, what's going on for you. There's fatigue that might be happening, or the pain that might be happening, to the extent that sometimes people don't even believe that you're ill.
Right, yeah.
So you kind of, you're stripped down a bit raw, and to the point where you go, this is who I am. This is how I need to live my life. This is how I want to live my life. Which are actually the questions and decisions that we should be making anyway.
So it's really kind of just a turning point for Johnny. You don't see it as the beginning of the end for the character or anything quite yet then?
Not at all, no. I mean, it's it's the beginning of a change. I think you definitely will change. You have to change, not your core self, but how you, I suppose, work with your own life.
Yeah.
So yeah, it will change him, and I'm not entirely sure that he'll do it the right way all the time. I think it's quite possibly, like I say, you might overdo things, and it's quite an interesting. When it comes and goes, you get a knock on the door, then you think, well, I'm okay now, I'm safe, so I'll get on and I'll do things, or I'll work too hard, which I would think he will do.
I can definitely imagine him doing that. What are some of your best memories of working in the factory on Corrie so far?
Oh, best memories. I've always loved when I was punched by Aiden. It was one of the first punch I ever got, and it's my first iconic moment. Really, was punched by Aiden and knocked over, covered in knickers. That was always great because there's so many knickers around. It's always sort of inherently funny, really, working in there. A lot of the courtship with Jenny, we had a good few. We thread a few needles in there.
The Blackpool stuff with Jenny was lovely as well, wasn't it? Last year? Was it?
Yeah, and the Blackpool stuff, that was terrific out there. That was extraordinary because also literally thousands of people come down to watch us film behind crash barriers, and people coming in and making the day of it with their families.
Wow.
And so that was pretty extraordinary, something I've never experienced before. It doesn't make it easy for the production team, but literally thousands and thousands of people.
You did it on an Easter week as well, didn't you? I seem to remember. So there's probably even more people than usual there having a bit of a breakaway.
Well, it's an odd bit of scheduling or something. I think that because it was involved with this sort of this historical story of Alan Bradley and the tram crash, that they probably had a lot of scheduling around trams that they just had to fit into whenever it could be, prepared. So I don't know why they chose Easter weekend, but there was an awful lot of people. We did get given an awful lot of chocolate eggs, actually.
That's nice.
Always good. So, are there any actors on the show that you haven't really had a chance to work with yet that you'd like to have more scenes with, maybe in the future, looking ahead?
Yeah, there's plenty, really. All of them. I know it's difficult to say, really. Roy, I think it'd be always a treat to work with him. I've really, I've worked with quite a lot because not on a deep level, but because there's so many of them in the factory, I kind of touched those stories a little bit. I think Joe Deteen, I'd love to have some more stuff. I bought some of his homemade beer off him, and that was just a very quick moment. I'd like to do more of that. Really, really, really enjoyed some stuff with Ken Barlow, actually. I think that I love working with Rita. I love working with all the people I work with, but it's always interesting to touch those sort of don't know what the word is really. It's that history. It's that deeper history that goes on with the royalty, really.
Yeah.
And I think that there's good. Ken and I think there might be some great mentoring conversations that we have. It's two fathers with wayward kids.
True.
What's it like up the line? A little bit older. And because that's one of the things that I am fascinated by. You never know what's going to happen to you, and that's part of the fun of the show. But there are bigger gods and bigger dogs than me, and I never really know what's coming my way. But undoubtedly, one of the things I'm interested in is what is it like to get older.
Yeah.
In that environment, which is sort of partly about age. I think. It kind of surfs on age in a way.
Yeah. Talking of other characters, we'd like to see more scenes with you with. What about your mate Connor? Because Phelan had a bit of a scuffle with Johnny last year, I think. I don't know whether there's still some lingering animosity between the two characters there.
It hasn't really been explored, has it? Yeah, I'd always love a dig at Phelan, really. He actually taught me how to punch him. We were practising the night before. He said, what you want to do is give me a right good dig in the kidney's ear. So we sort of got that in. So if I am to execute me, it will be his script. I don't know. There's nothing set up. There's always... We left it. I mean, it was left lingering in the way that was left. You know, sometimes the writers maybe pick that up. Sometimes they don't. He's terribly busy being evil with other people.
Yeah,
though.
that's true.
So, I'm not sure he's got time for me. He might have had something to do with the roof. I don't know. I'll ask him.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
could have.
yeah,
Yeah,
could
you
have
never
done.
know, never know. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and finding out more about what we think has been one of the best weeks of Corrie this year. Really, really loved it.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a fantastic week, and I'm very proud. And you know, one of the things, of course, you know, because like you say, I do share a flat with Connor, and I mean, a lot of the time, that's been one of life's treasures, actually, spending all this time together at this extraordinary time in Coronation Street of growth. And we really just sit there in awe and wonder and look at what's happening to us sometimes. Just go, God, man, look, it's just, you know, you could, well, we keep saying you couldn't write it, except, of course, people are.
Well, say hello to him from us as well.
I will, yeah. Lots of love, guys.
Yeah, you too. Thanks very much. So have a great rest of your day. See you.
Pleasure. Cheers. Bye.